Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuel. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, the Ukrainian peace process, if you know, which is a very fancy way of putting it, seems to be, going on and on and on to no particular purpose.
Well,
Um,
I mean, if it was a Netflix series, it would have been canceled by now.
Well, it would be interesting if it was a Netflix series. It was like we'd have, have episode after episode, which, but at least you've got a season, because,
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if you watched it. Lost. Did you heard about
I
that?
never, yeah, I have heard of it. I never watched
Yeah,
it.
I mean, okay, so you gotta watch, you must watch, much watch. So I watched 8 episodes, like binged it, and then I said nothing happens.
Yeah, yeah,
Nothing ever happened.
yes.
Am I supposed to watch episode after episode to get something to happen? Is that the marketing trick here? Is this the artistic style? Is that you sit in place hour after hour and these inane flashbacks? Why are you flashing back? You're on an island. I
Right.
don't need
No,
a
I
flash.
think I think that's the idea. So here with the, we had the 28 point plan. And then we had the all of the anguish, aggravation, protest, complaints on the part of Ukraine, and of course, even more important, the Europeans. And since then, they've been going backwards and forwards, coming up with variations on the plan. So
Okay,
putting in
did
all
you
sorts
see
of things.
this meme? Did you see this meme? I think yeah, I have to get the characters good. So Zelensky's sitting at a desk with a paper in front of him, the peace plan, and then there's JD Vance and maybe Marco Rubio right behind him, and he said, and it was go 28 to 18. He stole 10 points. He's 10 points. He stole them.
So, in a way, I mean, the players. It's clear we have the Trump who wants to get this over and done with. He wants this out of the way. He's sick of this. He has no interest in this war. Um, and then we have Zelensky. Obviously, he wants to keep this war going. He can only keep it going as long as he has the Europeans and the Americans on board, who would continue to pump him full of money and weapons and intelligence and so on. The Europeans, of course, also want to keep this war going. That it's their project, but they can only do so if they can have the Americans on board, the American backstop, as Keir Starmer likes to put it. So that's the dynamic. That's why we've got a show here. It's like a TV show. We've got the three characters, and then we've got all the different permutations in which they can play with one another. So they've been complaining about this plan, putting forward changes, and then they're coming up with elaborate ruses whereby they pretend to accept plans, and then they insert something in which they know perfectly well Russia will not accept, and then in the hope that Trump will get absolutely infuriated sitting in behind his desk in the Oval Office, and he said, "I'm sick to death of Putin. He talks nice and he just doesn't follow through. And then he will make his final irrevocable commitment
Well,
on
and
behalf
also,
of
George,
Ukraine."
irrespective of the permutation and changes being made, this is the Trump plan. But believe me, it is the Trump plan, okay? Which, of course, it isn't, okay?
Right.
It's being mangled here.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, ultimately, if you need a spoiler, everyone, it's let's just keep running the treadmill until we can convince Trump that it's Putin's fault. That's the
Yep.
that's the plan. That's it.
That's the plan. And the other aspect of the plan is, of course, to wait Trump out. He's now finished 1 year of his almost 1 year of his term. That means he's only got 3 more years to go. And they may think that, hey, the next 3 years may be a little bit easier than the 1 year that we've gone through, because if he continues to slump in the polls, he may decide that he's got to do something in order to get himself out of the jam. And that may be, to commit himself on behalf of
Well,
Ukraine.
yeah. I mean, this is how politics works. I mean, um, um, we have observed in real time what we believed was some kind of momentum. Okay, excitement through social. Rubio is doing that. It looks like something's coming together. Okay, he's a lot. There's no momentum now.
Right.
It's just completely deflated.
Right.
Now, this is important for politics because Trump, irrespective of if he has any ideology at all, which is a big question, but he's a man of motion. Okay, he's a man of action. That's
Yeah.
his politics.
Yeah.
Well, now he's not sprinting.
Right.
Maybe he's not even walking. It looks like he's just kind of standing, and that's when events happen around you.
Right.
Now, Trump is a master, and not always for good outcomes. Makes people react to him. That's what he wants. He wants to shake up the news cycle, make people talk about him, talk about his administration, talk about his policies. When it comes to Ukraine, he's dead in the water.
Is that in
He's
the water?
lost any kind of momentum. I mean, and then look, and then when you have the Russians look at this and they go, well, Anchorage was our best. Okay,
Right.
really, it was our best shot. And
That's right, and I think that's the problem with Trump. I think Trump realizes this is a bad situation, and I think rightly he sees this is dangerous. This process of escalation is inherently very, very dangerous. We could get ourselves into a World War III. He's come back to that theme again and again. We could get ourselves there. The Europeans and the Ukrainians are, of course, happily pushing it. They know perfectly well Ukraine cannot win this war without an American the decisive, direct military intervention on behalf of Ukraine. So that's what they're gearing towards. That's what they keep maneuvering and manipulating Trump towards. And Trump knows this, but he's not really willing, and maybe he doesn't know how, to get himself out of this mess, to essentially cut himself off
all
from
right.
the Europeans and the Ukrainians, and essentially tell them, okay, you want this war, go right ahead, but count us out.
All right, I think it's a good time to interject this. Okay, what am I talking about? What is George talking about? All right, let's play a counterfactual. Okay, George, Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger, way beyond in a different dimension,
Okay.
are watching all of this. What are they thinking? What do you think?
Well, I think they would say, look, you know what needs to be done, then get it done. I mean, it's not hard. And particularly, it's important in that the one thing you need to avoid as president of the United States, the one absolute unconditional thing you need to avoid is to get yourself into a war with a nuclear superpower. You have to avoid that. You can get yourself into wars with small countries that really can't do anything to you. You can do that, but don't get yourself into this war. So therefore, you know what you need to do. You have to avoid this, and therefore you've got, there are two or three things you need to do. Just do them. Don't waste your time. Don't waste everybody's time by going through a negotiating process that you already know ahead of time isn't going to deliver anything.
Yeah, and he famously said in the Oval Office was Zelensky, "You have no cards."
Right.
Okay, and I think Nixon Kissinger is more of a delivery boy. This whole Kissinger cult
Okay,
really.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Nixon was he was in that situation with Vietnam. It was an unwinnable war. It wasn't his war. Remember that, everybody. Okay, and he knew that the United States could not win, and he had to find a way diplomatically and public relations to get. In retrospect, George, whose fault was Vietnam in the public mind? It's not Nixon.
Right.
It's not.
Uh,
He succeeded.
he succeeded.
He won.
Yeah.
He won historically.
He won
There's a
historically.
lot of things about Nixon you can say, but you can
Right.
no one can say in their right mind Nixon lost Vietnam. No.
No, 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 absolutely
It
not.
means his policy worked.
His policy worked. Exactly. And people think, well, who is primarily responsible? Let's say Kennedy and Johnson, because it was Kennedy and Johnson who escalated what up until then had been a relatively minor conflict into a huge war and a huge international disaster for the United States, something that really was, engendering massive anti-American feeling because America was fighting a small backward peasant society, and you're using devastating weapons. I mean, it's just not a good look. I mean, no one can say that this was a good look. And so, yeah, they get blamed. Nixon was the one who ended it, and he figured out what he needs to do. Now, in this case, when you think of what's going on with the Europeans who want to keep the war going, then and Trump has said that at news conferences when he'd say something like, "Well, if you want to keep it going, well, have at it, do it, but don't count on us. We're not going to help you." And the moment that happens, the moment he says, "We're not going to provide any intelligence," that's it, we're not providing any more intelligence, they're going to say, "That's it. We can't keep this war going." And then once they realize defeat is inevitable, then I think it's going to focus minds. But he hasn't done it, and I think
Well,
that's a serious
yeah,
issue.
but see, I don't think he said it explicitly about the Europeans, but he certainly, as you said, he's strongly implied it. He said it about the Ukrainians. You don't have any cards. Well, what are the European cards here? It's reputational, as you and I've spoken before. I think his greatest concern is he doesn't want to be blamed for it. That's that because the outcome is inevitable. Death on the battlefield will continue, the destruction will continue, but the outcome is obvious to everyone. Trump doesn't want the stench of defeat because the Democrats in the United States will call it a defeat, guaranteed, everybody.
Right.
Okay.
But you see,
And what Trump needs a way, and I think that there is a way. I think that he has to show more leadership, and
right,
he really has to be much more explicit with instead of standing on Air Force One or going to the helicopter bitching about the Europeans. It has to be much more concerted and
right,
focused,
right,
and what America's position is right now, and just say it.
right.
From our position, this war is lost. We don't want to be pouring good money after bad. We don't want this to escalate because it's not the Europeans that the Russians are afraid of. They're afraid of going to the highest level of escalation with good
But
reason.
that's right. So, but let's just take a look first at what Trump said. It was I think it was on Friday at the news conference, and he was talking about the Europeans and and the Ukrainians. So let's just take a look what he said.
The Europeans back in July, if I remember right, to participate in some kind of a peacekeeping force. Should there be a peace agreement? You mentioned, I think, air support, intelligence, and so forth. Does that commitment still stand? Is the U.S. ready to go contribute to
Well,
this?
the security agreement,
Yeah.
basically, that they
Yeah.
call it, the
Which sounds
security
like
agreement.
one
Yeah,
of the
we would
things.
help. We would help with security because it's, I think, a necessary factor in getting it done. I thought that we were very close with Russia to having a deal. I thought we were very close with Ukraine to having a deal. In fact, other than President Zelensky, his people loved the concept of the deal. We threw something
This
out.
is the fourth part deal with you.
Well, there's 4 or 5 different parts. It's, a little bit complicated because you're cutting up land in a certain way. It's not the easiest thing. It's sort of like a complex real estate deal times 1,000, right? But it's a deal that would have stopped the killing of thousands of lives every month, thousands and thousands of lives, mostly soldiers. But as you know, there's some
Are
martyrs
you
being.
saying sort of a Korea-like ceasefire where you don't resolve?
Well, there's a meeting on Saturday. We'll see whether or not we attend the meeting. We said we'll attend the meeting if we think there's a good chance of. They want me to attend. They want us to attend, and we'll be attending the meeting on Saturday in Europe if we think there's a good chance, and
But
we
they
don't want
did.
to waste a lot of.
Well, so this is where we're at the moment, where there's the meeting. We have the meeting on Saturday. I think that never really happened. So the next thing is going to be the meeting on Monday in Berlin. So it's supposed to be a meeting on Saturday in Paris, but now it's been rescheduled for
Okay, but George, you need to explain to me and the audience. Okay, why is he giving the Europeans a seat at the table, why doesn't he just make a deal with Russia and say, this is it? Okay.
Right.
Take it or leave it. I've wasted enough time on this.
Yeah.
I know that it's not, no one is going to be particularly happy, but this is how it's going to end the conflict. No ceasefire. No ceasefire. No.
Right.
This is what we're going to back. I don't understand why it doesn't take that strategy. Considering the new national security document, why don't you actually fulfill it?
Well, national security.
I don't understand why he continues to give airtime to the
No, I quite agree, and I think he's got. Look. Let's say this phrase security guarantees. Now, nobody knows exactly what that means. You can easily paper over it and say, yeah, we'll give you security guarantees. I mean, he gave a security guarantee to Qatar. Oh, an attack on Qatar is an attack on the United States. Okay, so what does that mean? You're going to go, anything happens to Qatar, you go to war. So it doesn't mean a great deal as long as you don't station U.S. forces. There's no question. There are going to be no U.S. forces stationed in Ukraine. I mean, that's not going to happen. And as long as no European NATO powers station forces, you can say, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll give you a security guarantee. Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth.
We could have a memorandum of understanding.
Yeah, it's a security guarantee. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. I mean,
because
so they keep repeating this thing, security guarantee. But you can say, yeah, okay, here's your guarantee. It doesn't amount to anything, but it's a security guarantee.
I can guarantee you is that, I'm jumping ahead here, but sure, the security guarantees, okay? There is a roadmap to end the conflict.
Right.
Russia and the United States agree with security guarantees. And then Trump will say, it's over, I've solved it. And but are the security guarantees in place? Well, I mean, this is our intention,
right?
This is what we would like to see. No, Trump is going to close the book on this and say, "I'm out of here. I'm out of here."
That's right. And of course, he can always go and say, "Well, okay, sure, security guarantee, but of course, the Senate has to ratify it." Now, that's going to be a problem because although the Republicans will say, yeah, we'll ratify it. The Democrats will probably say, no, we're not going to ratify it. But first of all, we're not going to give Trump a win. But secondly, they say, well, we don't like the rest of the agreement, so we're not going to be a party to the agreement. Then he won't get the 67 votes. I mean, he needs the 67 to ratify it.
I think it would be a problem for many Republicans.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because they're going to say, look, I thought we were disengaging from this. Now you want another one?
Right.
Another one?
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah. No, that's
and
right.
Then the kleptomania that's going on and all of that. I mean, you and I pointed it out is that and George, I almost forgot. I want to inform you that when we did that our podcast on the New York Times, discovering, oh my God, how dreadful that everybody else followed us. I just wanted you to know.
That's right. But here you see, as he continues, you can hear his exasperation with the Europeans. But as you say, he's exasperated, yet he's going through with it. It's like, and that's the soap opera aspect of it. It's like, you're still seeing people that you already know are bad news. They're not going to get you anything, but you continue with it.
I think it's negative. We want it to get settled. We want to save a lot of lives. As you know, in the past, we could be $350 billion, giving it to Ukraine. We got nothing in return, but we gave it to Ukraine. I ended up getting rare earth in return, even though I didn't spend money. And we are now selling weapons to NATO. We're not selling it to Ukraine. We're selling weapons at full price to NATO, as you know. They distribute those weapons probably to Ukraine for the most part. They're probably doing it to others also, but we're not involved in the war other than the fact that we are involved in a negotiation because people want us there. Ukraine wants us involved very much. Europe wants us involved. I have a great relationship with the countries of Europe. As you know, I took GDP. I took what they're spending as a percentage of GDP, but it was at 2 and they weren't paying, and now it's at 5. And everybody's amazed. But at
It's not
5%
advised.
a lot of it's coming back to the United States. With that being said, I'd like to see the killing stop. 25,000 people died last month, soldiers, mostly soldiers, but some people also where bombs were dropped. But for the most part, 25,000 soldiers died last month. I would love to see it stop. And we're working very hard. It doesn't really affect the United States unless it got out of control. You know, a thing like that, and you probably.
But you see, if he says it doesn't affect the United States, so why are you involved in this? I mean, if it doesn't affect you, yeah, why are you involved in this? What does it matter to you? What is, the eastern borders of Ukraine? What the hell does it matter?
Is he worried about the reputation and future of NATO? That doesn't make any sense to me.
That doesn't make any sense either, because he's never really cared much about NATO. I mean, I think he does worry about his reputation, that if he presides over.
That's exactly what yes.
Right. The dissolution.
He doesn't want to be left holding the ball.
Yeah. But that's it. I mean, because all these Europeans, I mean, Merz, particularly Merz, they're all saying, hey, this is the end. The NATO is on the brink of the end. The end of Pax Americana. This is the end of the Western Alliance, the end of the transatlantic relationship. Now, we might say, and a good thing too, but it may be that this will affect Trump. You say, well, hey, do I want to be known as the president who presided over the end of the great, wonderful transatlantic alliance?
Well, this plays into something that you and I have talked about on numerous occasions. So is the European plan, I don't think it really has much to do with Ukraine, to be honest with you. What they want is to keep the conflict going so they can get on their feet, knowing that, because, this whole scenario of once Trump's gone, there'll be Gavin Newsom or something. First of all, I wouldn't put any money on anything like that right now. I do see a separation. I do think separating the U.S. from Europe. I see fractures within NATO. That doesn't mean NATO is going to go away. I know that's a wet dream for a lot of people. It's not going to go away. As a matter of fact, just the reverse. We'll say NATO and the NATO leadership would say, finally, we have a real enemy. We have a real reason to exist now, okay? Because George and I have lived through it, well, why do we need to? Well, we need to have military civilian control and blah, blah, blah. All these kind of inane, stupid things, we have to make sure the Hungarians and the Romanians don't fight each other, okay? They're just like, okay, all right. That never cut any ice with people, serious people. But now, so my point is that they want, they probably feel they can't roll Trump unless we have a black swan event, okay, which somebody will invent, okay. So it gives them a breathing time to shut down dissent. Justify cutting the welfare state, putting up a military-industrial complex, conscription. They have this window, and they can say, hey, and Trump's not helping us. This is why we have to do this. This is why we have to do this. Yes. Okay.
I think
they're not going to save Ukraine. What they're doing is it's actually an EU nation-building project.
No, I agree. I think that's what they're doing. I mean, and that's where it's clearly going. I mean, you have Merz, who's essentially step by step reintroducing conscription. It's a step by step process. It's
because there's a war going on in Ukraine. It's going on. That's why we have to have conscription.
That's right. So it starts off. You just register. Doesn't mean you're going to serve. You just register. Okay. Then it goes. Yeah. Well, maybe because the situation is so dire. The threat to Europe is so dire. Maybe we will have military service. Oh, for men only. Maybe just for men, not for women. But then Merz says, but maybe at some point down the road, we should think about women as well. So that's it. Basically, they're already talking about, for men, conscription for men and for women. Macron's doing the same thing. It's a step-by-step process. They know you can't just introduce it from one day to the next. So you have to say, it's going to be a voluntary thing, just kids after school,
Yes, yes.
having fun in the fields. No,
And
nothing serious, nothing to worry about.
in the meantime, warehouses are blowing up,
That's
and
it.
there are drones all over the way, and balloons. Okay,
Yeah,
keep it rolling, keep
right,
it rolling.
right,
Okay,
right.
because the Europeans, they're fanatical in some ways, but they're very calculating in others. I mean, Trump is kind to cross the Rubicon. I mean, he's just, you know, I mean, I've been seeing reports on the U.S. pulling troops out of some Eastern European countries. There's a rebalancing going on, but the Europeans have to keep the tempo
Right.
up.
That's right.
And just to see, we are the good guys. Trump, he's an anomaly. We don't know what's going to happen with the Americans. Okay. Anyway, they're really mean to us now. Okay.
Yes.
They're telling us that we're not democratic.
Right.
And we're censorious, which you are democratic and you are censorious. Okay. And all the while we're the bulwark
Yeah.
against this monstrous empire in the
That's
east here. No, I mean it's a very interesting mix right
that's
here.
right. That's right.
Okay,
That's
but
right.
it's
And yeah.
more about the European Union.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's right. And what we have now is because of this way over the top hysteria. So Merz, who delivered a speech on Saturday, talking about the end of Pax Americana, so we've got to do everything ourselves, also likened Putin to Hitler. And let's just take a look at that because that's them's are fighting words. And I haven't seen that the Russians have reacted, but I don't think they'll react very well to a German chancellor calling a Russian president Hitler. Merz compares Putin to Hitler. He won't stop. Just as the Sudetenland was not enough in 1938, Putin will not stop, Merz told a party conference in Germany. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz compared Russian President Vladimir Putin to Adolf Hitler in a speech on Saturday, warning that the Kremlin leader's ambitions won't stop with Ukraine. Just as the Sudetenland was not enough in 1938, Putin will not stop, and then so on. And then he says, if Ukraine falls, he won't stop there. Merz said, referring to Putin, if Russian aggressive war against this is Russian aggressive war against Ukraine and against Europe, Putin's aim is a fundamental change to the borders in Europe, the restoration of the old Soviet Union within its borders. Now, I do have a question here.
Go back to that because it's kind of interesting.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Let me. Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Well, since when is Ukraine part of Europe?
Ukraine is not a part of, but they say yes.
No, but I mean, it wasn't 15 minutes ago. Now it is.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
You know, the terms of engagement keep changing here. Okay.
Yes.
It's Europe that's fundamentally changed borders in Europe.
Right. That exactly. That's the point. That's what's always forgotten in all these things is that, well, who has been changing the borders? Who has been altering the status quo? I mean, the status quo was altered by NATO. NATO altered the status quo by moving its borders 1,000 miles to the east. Now, the reason that I thought this is interesting, what exactly is Merz's game here? I mean, if you compare Putin to Hitler, that seems to me like them's are fighting words. Because, I don't think the Russians will respond well to that kind of talk. And then you think, well, are you seeking to escalate? I mean, is that really what you want to do? You want to really make war guaranteed? Because, I always have the feeling that if the Russians may be restrained about attacking Great Britain, they're restrained about attacking France, obviously restrained about attacking the United States. I don't think they're restrained about attacking Germany. I really think that's the one country that they might well just attack and say, we've had it. We dealt with the German problem 80 years ago. We're not going to put up with this again. So that's why I think that's a kind of almost like a provocation. That somehow this is the one that the Russians really won't put up with.
You can't You can't outdo that one, George. The as far as provocation in a rhetorical sense, you can't get any higher than that. He's peaked.
You're right.
Okay, you're done. I mean, it's very dangerous. Okay, you and I have observed this for years. When someone is compared to Hitler, then you can't talk to Hitler.
No.
Okay, so what are you doing, Merz?
But that's it. You're absolutely right, and that's a very interesting thing because he says this over the weekend.
What are you doing?
And so, what is the point of all this diplomacy? You've been lying. You're lying by pretending that you're interested in some kind of diplomacy. Oh, we ought to get Putin to the negotiating table. Well, how can you get Putin to the negotiating? You said he's Hitler. So you're going to get Hitler to the negotiating table?
No Russian leader will ever shake Merz's hand again. It's done.
Right.
Okay, I guess that's what he wants, huh? Okay. Right. So not only have you closed the door, you've bolted it.
Yes.
You've welded it. Okay.
Yes. Right.
Okay. Okay. Be careful what you're wishing for.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. But that's it. And so he's essentially he's saying there is no point in any negotiation. So you're going through this motion. Berlin's going to be the meeting tomorrow between Zelensky and Steve Witkoff. It's supposed to take place in Berlin, so presumably Merz will be there. He'll be hosting this meeting. What's the point of this? I mean, Merz is obviously completely insincere about this. He has no interest in this.
But what he wants to do also, again, we're going to have a long talk about the whole Witkoff thing in this. The German Chancellor calls Putin Hitler, and he's meeting with Witkoff, meaning this is a communal thing. Witkoff will meet the man that calls Putin Hitler. Okay, right. This is very bad. This is very poisonous.
Right.
Okay. I mean, Witkoff is not a sophisticated man in these affairs. Maybe he's very good at real estate. I don't know, but
the Russians can work with Witkoff.
If I were, I would say you better be careful, Merz. You better be careful with your language because this is a delicate situation, and you've made it far worse. Do you realize what you're saying? A German in Berlin calling a Russian leader Hitler. Do you understand? Does Witkoff understand that? I don't know.
Witkoff probably doesn't understand. He doesn't know the significance of that. I mean, he obviously doesn't know history. But Merz and the Germans, they know very well. They know exactly what happens when you say that. I mean, didn't Prince Charles, I think he was still Prince Charles at the time, didn't he say liken Russia to Nazi Germany? I seem to remember early on in 2022, I think he likened Russia to Nazi Germany. But that's still the British. And the Russians will still accept this. Okay, well, at least they were wartime allies.
Well, and he's Prince of whatever.
He's the Prince of well, exactly. But Merz, whose grandfather, I think, fought with the Wehrmacht in World War II, and Putin, who lost his brother, and I think other family members were lost in World War II.
In the siege of Leningrad, right?
Yes, he lost his brother in the siege of Leningrad. I think he lost his grandmother as well. That's a serious issue. And when you're talking like that, you're more saying, really, this is Germany once again. Germany once again, they've never really been able to accommodate themselves to Russia. Germany has always been there's been schizophrenia in German history. There've been Germans who wanted to work with Russia, but there've been Germans who have been absolutely pathological in their hatred of Russia. It seems like this new era of Merz and then before him, Sergeant Schultz, they're in the pathological hatred. That's very dangerous, and particularly given his ambitions and Merz's ambitions. Germany is going to become the leading military power in Europe, and you're already comparing Putin to Hitler. Them serious business.
Yeah, but what he's doing, I used the metaphor of closing doors. I mean, these doors cannot be opened again. I mean, you're
Right.
going to have to really, apologize and explain yourself. They're not going to do that, George. They're not going to do it.
Right.
And basically, Germany wants to be the center of the anti-Russia coalition again.
Yep.
Again.
Yep. That's exactly that's
And
exactly.
it's interesting is that this time around the Poles and the Baltics, they will go along with it.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
they
right.
will go along with it. George and I have pointed this out so many times, and if you're uninitiated, keep in mind, look what the coalition that Hitler created. It was a, how many times has Russia invaded countries? Okay, well, the Soviet Union then was invaded by a lot of countries.
A
Okay,
lot of
and
countries. Yeah.
they're building the same coalition. What's worse is that you have the Hitlerite coalition of the early 40s. Not in 2025, add the UK, the United States, Canada,
Right.
Australia,
Right.
Japan,
Yep.
etc.
Yep.
This coalition is far bigger and far more powerful, at least in economic terms.
Yep.
Military terms is another question at this point.
Right, but the United States is on board. So you add the United States on this, that's a big military power. Without the United States, yeah, okay, they're economically great power, but militarily it wouldn't be. But with the United States, absolutely, it's a huge power,
I
and
wonder
that's
when
why
Marco.
very
Go ahead.
yeah, Kaya
Just wondering
Kallas.
if Marco Rubio would chime in on this.
That's
Okay.
now Kaya Kallas
Oh, great.
who said, okay, that what was it? The Russia invaded what 19 countries, didn't you say, in the last 100 years? Um, last 100 years. Not one of whom had attacked Russia. Not one of whom. And then this was repeated the other day by the Finnish foreign minister. I forget her name. This sort of Valtonen, I think, or something. Anyway, but it's very interesting. She repeated this as if somehow this is a truism, evidently forgetting Finland's role in World War II. Finland took part, of course, in the siege of Leningrad. And was an allied with Nazi Germany. It's very interesting that they continue along this line. Obviously, the equation of Russia and the Soviet Union, but putting out this lie. That's very important. You keep out this lie. Russia has attacked 19 countries, not one of whom had ever attacked Russia. Not one of whom.
Yeah, it's interesting. But there's no doubt that Germany, the Soviet Union, invaded Germany in 1945.
They
Okay.
did invade. They did invade.
How does my picture look? I see. I think I'm blurry. Do I look
Well,
blurry?
I was not. I noticed that as well. You look blurry. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure where
But
that's
maybe
coming.
it'll go away.
Not my thoughts, but my picture. See.
That looks
Yeah,
better. I think it looks better. But anyway, here was then the when we look at this sort of the blow by blow as to what's happening at the moment. We have the Zelensky to meet Witkoff and Kushner on Trump's peace push. And here we have this Witkoff and Jared Kushner are expected to meet Monday in Berlin with Zelensky and the leaders of Germany, France, and the UK to try and reach an agreement. Now, it's a very interesting, though, if the leaders, in other words, if you know, French president will be there and Starmer will be there, that's quite a step down. The Americans are only represented by Witkoff and Jared Kushner, not even by Rubio. I mean, talk about no symmetry, no real respect. If the most senior figure there is Steve Witkoff on the American side.
I pointed this out before. Okay, when Witkoff and Kushner came to Moscow, they were treated in the most polite fashion. But I don't see that the Russians see that they're the ones that have the institutional credibility, even legitimacy. Sure, they'll be polite and they will listen. And now this is happening to the Europeans. Why the Europeans think that this is a power team showing up, I don't know. Yes, they have Trump's ear, okay? But we don't know anything more than that.
Well, we don't. Now, well, we have to assume, though, that Witkoff is probably speaking for Trump. I think that's probably those are Trump's views. What we still don't have, and this will go back to what we were talking about earlier, what we don't have is Trump in any way acting to implement that view. Yeah, you can send Witkoff. Witkoff seems to be able to, he gets on well with Putin. I think they respect Witkoff, and Witkoff clearly, I mean, this is the point they're saying about Anchorage, that the peace plan that was put forward at Anchorage was the Witkoff plan that Witkoff had presented to Putin earlier. That was so they would say, yeah, that's okay, that's Witkoff, but there was no further movement on that plan from Anchorage. And so that's why they treat Witkoff with respect and say, okay, well, you seem to understand our point of view. You seem to speak for Trump. Russia still never says anything negative about Trump. It's still
right.
very, very respectful. And they say
right.
Trump understands our position. This administration, unlike the Europeans, unlike Biden, understands Russian position, understands the root causes. But that doesn't lead to anything unless you know how to implement that.
Agreed.
So the White House is pushing Ukraine hard to approve its plan, but the territorial concessions Kiev is being asked to make remain a major sticking point. The US side thinks all other issues are close to resolution, and that Zelensky may have offered a path forward on territory.
I don't think it's only about territory. I'm sorry. I think
well,
it's far.
I agree with you, but what I'm trying to think is that let's say if the U.S. says, I think other issues can be resolved. I think if they can resolve this business of the security guarantees, they say, yeah, fine, we'll give you a security guarantee. It doesn't mean anything, but if you want to call it a security guarantee, we'll call it a security guarantee. We'll write out a guarantee, the same guarantee that the United States offered Qatar. Which ultimately doesn't mean a great deal, but just like a show, we'll set it out and say, an attack on Ukraine, the United States will treat an attack on Ukraine as if it were an attack on the United States, and will act accordingly. What does that mean?
Accordingly,
yeah, something along those lines. They're not going to a formal treaty that would require Senate ratification. The United States is not going to give a formal treaty. I mean, you have to be a real dimwit to issue a formal treaty to Ukraine. So maybe they think we can get around the security guarantee issue, and we can get around the issue of no NATO membership, no NATO presence in Ukraine.
The security, again, this is a deception. What Trump wants and what the Russians want, they want a political solution, addressing the core issues of this conflict. That must come first, and then security guarantees. See, not security guarantees first. That will come after, when peace has been established.
Right.
Then that's the sleight of hand right here. The Russians will go along with that. Well, they will, okay? I mean, no American troops, no NATO troops in Ukraine, okay? All these things. And, George, you can call it a security guarantee.
Right, exactly. You can absolutely.
That's fine.
That's fine. I mean, you can't stop, issuing a security guarantee as long as there are no NATO forces in Ukraine. That's the point. But sure, if you want to keep American forces in Poland, it's a security guarantee. Okay, well, we can't stop you keeping American forces in Poland, but as long as they're not in Ukraine. I think maybe that's what they mean by, well, other issues are close to resolution. The intrigue, and so the White House official noted that Zelensky suggested during public remarks on Thursday that Ukraine could hold a referendum on a peace deal that included ceding territory. The official said the U.S. sees that as progress. Now, the referendum idea is, of course, a ridiculous notion.
Ruse, yeah.
Because, of course, there'll be no referendum, presumably, in the Donbass. I mean, exactly. There won't be a vote there. And of course, he said, we we need to station NATO forces to ensure security during the referendum. Oh,
And because we need NATO troops to guarantee a free and fair election, we need a ceasefire.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. That's why this isn't going to fly. I mean, even Trump is not going to, even before we get to the Russian part of it, he'll see through this and say, this is absurd. But here you say, in those same remarks, Zelensky made clear he's highly skeptical of the U.S. proposal for a free economic zone in the Donbass, and
I'm skeptical too.
Yeah, me too. I'm not even sure exactly what it means, but
I don't know what it means.
he said he believes the question of whether the compromise that Ukraine is being asked to make a fair will be answered by the people of Ukraine in a referendum or election. The election is itself, and also, during the election, we need a ceasefire. It's going to be a 3-month election campaign. We need a ceasefire, and we need to monitor the ceasefire. And only NATO can monitor the ceasefire. Whoa, that's a real clever ploy.
Oh, yes. I don't know who came up with it. Okay, it'll certainly fly with liberals. Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
That's
okay.
right.
I would make a compromise. My compromise is this: if you want to hold an election, hold your election on election day. There will be a 24-hour cessation of hostilities.
Yeah.
Go to the polls.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So yeah, we'll have a 24-hour ceasefire, so people can actually go to the polling places, and there'll be a ceasefire. That's it. During the campaign, why? And then he goes, holding such a vote under the current circumstances will be highly challenging. But a U.S. official said, the Europeans said during a meeting on Friday that if Zelensky proposed a referendum on territory, they will support him. Well, of course the Europeans said that. Wow. Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. They said that.
Everybody, you can't hold elections during wartime. Well, Afghanistan did.
Iraq did.
Iraq did.
South
the
Vietnam
United States
did.
During the Civil War did.
Yep, exactly. And of course, South Vietnam did. South Vietnam had a number of elections during wartime. There was never any ceasefire. Just as though there were peace negotiations without any ceasefire. No one said, "Oh, we have a ceasefire must be a condition of peace negotiations."
It's so hilarious watching these Europeans that are trashing the very idea of elections and democracy, but they're in support of it in Ukraine.
That's it. Exactly. In that virtual meeting, Witkoff and Kushner discussed the plan for a demilitarized zone with the national security advisors of Ukraine, Germany, France, and the UK.
Mr. Witt, Steve, buddy guy, love to have a beer with you. You can't talk about a demilitarized zone without Russia, okay? Because the Germans and the French and the UK are going to be all for it. It's like a waste of meeting.
It is.
How could it go anywhere?
Right. I mean, the Russians have already ruled out any demilitarized zone. I mean, this is Ushakov said that there'd be no demilitarized zone.
Yeah, well, so on the war on drugs, we're going to make Texas a demilitarized zone. Okay.
Right.
Okay. A buffer. Okay. No.
Right. And then negotiations on the security guarantee Ukraine would receive from the US and Europe have made significant progress. A senior official said the Trump administration is willing to give Ukraine a guarantee based on NATO's Article 5 that would be approved by Congress and be legally binding. Okay, so that's
yeah.
It ain't gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
That's a first-year law student. Yeah, well, in theory, okay, it's so divorced from reality.
That's right. Yeah,
it's interesting, George, to have this phantom referendum. Is it going to be a presidential election too? if you're gonna hold a referendum, how about have a presidential election too?
Well, I think Zelensky did suggest having a presidential election after Trump made those remarks in that Politico interview. Well, I think it's time they had an election. So election. But we need a 3-month ceasefire during the election campaign. So and of course we need the NATO forces to monitor the ceasefire.
The polling stations.
Yeah,
we need.
But throughout, so we can we can go around campaigning. Without megaphone campaigning. We want to give the Ukrainians a security guarantees that will not be a blank check on the one hand, but will be strong enough on the other hand. We are willing to send it to Congress to vote on. This is very funny. The U.S. official said,
Wow, that person must, you know, is this just a functionary? Won't be a blank check on the one hand, but strong. Okay.
well, it's a very interesting formulation because it means essentially it's not going to mean anything. Because if it's not a blank check, I mean, a blank check means the moment Ukraine gets into a fight with someone else, we have to come in on their side. Well, we're not going to do that. Well, that means, in other words, any attempt on your part to continue this war to provoke will not ensure America coming in on your behalf. So by putting it in that way, as if somehow, essentially, they're asking us a blank check, means they know what the game is. This U.S. official knows what exactly the U.S. is being asked to do.
It's like pregnancy, everyone. A blank check is a blank check
Right.
or it isn't. Okay, so you can't be a little bit pregnant.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so this is verbiage.
Because it's but that's what a security guarantee is. A security guarantee, in the way people talk about it, is a blank check. What they really talk about is what Britain issued Poland in March 1939. That was a blank check, and it was a catastrophic decision. Still, people are baffled about why Britain did this. It's kind of a mystery. No one's actually been able to solve for 85 years. But that was a blank check. And of course, it was disastrous. That's what they're talking about. Hey, give us a blank check, and then the moment there's any trouble with Russia, boom, you're in a war with Russia. The U.S. official said that there will be 3 separate agreements on peace, security guarantees, and reconstruction, and that the latest talks have given the Ukrainians a full day after vision for the first time.
Okay, that full day after. Okay. All right, keep going.
I don't know what that is. Negotiations over the post-war economic and reconstruction package are going well. That's good. Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, it's like who wants to pick up the pieces and have the American taxpayer pay for it and the European one? Great.
Yeah.
That's easy. That's easy.
Right. When people see what they're going to get and not only what they're going to give away, they are more willing to move forward.
Who is this U.S. official?
Yeah, I know. Who is this U.S. official? Yeah, that's right. According to the current proposal, the war will end with Ukraine keeping sovereignty over 80% of its territory, will get the biggest and strongest security guarantee it has ever got, and will get a very significant prosperity package. And it says, okay, that's great. And what's the friction point? The friction. Several European leaders have been counseling Zelensky that he does not need to rush into a deal. Well, of course, that's what they've been counseling. Don't do it. Just keep kicking the can down the road. Yeah, let's have another meeting. I think, once this meeting in Berlin is done, I think it'll be time for a meeting in Downing Street.
Yeah, I think the only outcome of that meeting will be we need another meeting.
Exactly. We need another meeting. Yeah, coalition of the willing. Let's go meet in Downing Street. But it's the holiday now, so it's the holiday season. No need for meetings until mid-January. So just keep delaying. And then so it's also unclear if Russia will be willing to accept the U.S. proposals. Well, I think that's
You think
you think exactly. Anyway, so here is the Financial Times. Some good news for the Financial Times. Ukraine would join EU next year under draft peace plan. So next year.
This is a Babylon V, right?
Move back by Brussels. Now,
what?
You have to have unanimity. Unanimity. All EU member states have to agree. So they think, oh, well, it's only Viktor Orban who's against it. No, it's not only Viktor Orban who's against it.
Poland won't agree.
Poland won't agree. Slovakia won't agree. I think the Czechs are not going to agree. I think a number of countries are not going to agree to this. I don't think Bulgaria is going to agree. I think Romania. I mean, they're all thinking about, well, what's going to happen to our farmers? They're just going to be wiped out of business.
Oh, yeah. And, all of the money the EU has poured into the eastern flank
Yes.
over the last 20 years, and then they don't want that to dry up.
Yeah.
No way.
Right.
I mean, Ukraine is a huge sinkhole, everyone,
Yes, exactly.
and there's going to be no little morsels for anyone else. And we know what will happen to the money.
That's right. Exactly. Because for Ursula von der Leyen, this is her project. That's all she cares about. So you're the rest of Europe, you're not going to get anything. Everything is going to Ukraine. Ukraine would join the EU next year under a proposal backed by Brussels in negotiations to end Russia's war. I always love it when they say these things. Negotiations with whom? Who's negotiating? How can you end Russia's war without negotiating with Russia?
Well, what does Russia care one way or another?
Right.
What is it to Russia? What you want that you want Ukraine in your club? Go knock yourself out. What does it have to do with Russia, George?
Exactly. But that's it. It has nothing to do with Russia. But they think that, well, that's going to be the Russians are not going to be happy with it, so therefore it's a good idea. But there's no mechanism. I mean, there's no way that they can do this. It's just, oh, great, well, we want to do it. We'll suck it to Putin.
Okay, everybody. Why is Ursula von der Leyen doing this? And it's a theme that George and I have talked about since the advent of this podcast. The EU is NATO's back door.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's what they want. They think,
yes.
No, NATO won't be involved. No. When the EU is there,
right.
Because NATO is like a termite. Okay. Once they get in your house.
That's right. Exactly. EU accession by January the 1st, 2027 is specified. So that's just 12 months from now. January the 1st, 2027. Remember, the war isn't over. We're a long way from the war being over, and already January the 1st, 2027 is the date that they're talking. So it's the date, and then it says the latest version comes as Donald Trump steps up pressure on Ukraine's President Zelensky to agree on a peace deal by Christmas. And again, what has this got? What's EU membership got to do with Trump? What does Trump care?
What does EU membership have to do with the war?
That's quite. Officials supportive of Ukraine's EU ambitions said the European Commission now understands it should not derail the peace process by opposing the rapid timeline for Kiev's membership. This is just mind-boggling. Derail, European Commission derail. I still, what has this got to do with the peace process? Ukraine is yet to formally complete even one of the EU's more than 30 negotiating chapters, and the schedule would upend the bloc's merit-based approach to admitting new members.
Well, at least the FT is honest about that. Jeez.
More than 30 negotiators yet to formally complete even one of the. So, but the Ursula von der Leyen said, "Oh yeah, we'll get it. We'll get you in." The people briefed on the peace plan. I still don't know what's the peace plan.
Who are the people?
Whose peace plan is it? The peace plan said it would force Brussels to rethink its entire enlargement process, including issues such as the timing of access to EU funds and voting rights. So give us EU funds, and give us voting rights already. And then, of course, Zelensky said, well, if we agree to a deal specifying when Ukraine becomes a member of the EU, the Americans as a party to this agreement will do everything so that our European path cannot be blocked by others in Europe over whom they have influence. So he's suggesting that, well, they're all going to agree because America's going to apply pressure against Viktor Orban to agree to this.
Viktor Orban is never going to agree.
He's never going to agree to this. No, Fitzo's not going to agree to this. At
the end of the day, the Poles will not agree.
No, Poles will not agree to it. And then here, this is very interesting because this is Politicos has a different take. They're saying Ukraine hopes to entice. Remember, we had the previous story saying Zelensky rules out the free economic zone, but here they're saying, oh no, it's Ukraine's idea to have the free economic zone. Ukraine's latest peace plan proposes a demilitarized free economic zone in the Donbass region
Well,
where,
good for Ukraine. Good for
yeah,
Ukraine.
where American business interests could operate.
Yeah,
An
we've been
attempt to
through
bring
this.
President Donald Trump on board. And then here, Ukrainian President Zelensky also spoke to reporters about the proposal, suggesting that control of the buffer zone in eastern Ukraine still needs to be worked out, but that under the new proposal, troops from both Russia and Ukraine would be barred. So that's a
This
new
is
proposal, but which Russia will not accept.
this is this unicorn thinking. This is ridiculous. Again, I keep stressing this. This is a conversation, an inter-Atlanticist conversation. And if for it to have any meaning, you have to have the other party, Russia, involved in this.
Right.
You can talk among yourselves about, voting rights and funds and all of that.
Right.
The war is still going on.
Exactly. Exactly. But all of this is geared towards what we were saying earlier, to present Russia as the obdurate party, and therefore to persuade Trump to abandon all of his attempts to bring this thing to an end and throw the weight of the United States behind Ukraine. That's what it's all about. This is so they're going through the motions. They're completely insincere. We know that they're totally insincere about this in order to present Russia as the problem party. Because Trump doesn't seem to be convinced that they are the problem party. He seems to be blaming Zelensky. And then they said that Zelensky said marked a compromise from the original 28-point peace plan authored by the US with Russian input, under which Russian troops would control the region. But he noted that Ukraine would only withdraw its forces after receiving meaningful security guarantees from allies against future aggression from Moscow.
Well, he exposes his ploy here because he doesn't give a shit about Donbass at all. He doesn't. Okay, he really doesn't. Okay, and so I'll give it up, and if I can get into the European Union and I can get NATO Article 5. I mean, that can fly. Oh no, they'll never give up they've already lost them. Okay, so they're not going to get them back. So what did they get for the pound of flesh?
Right.
Okay, that is what's going on here. Okay. Right. Oh, Zelensky might be no, and they'll have a battalion of Marines protecting him or something like that. No, this is what this is all about. Is what can I get by losing?
That's right.
I can win if I lose.
That's right. Trump has suggested that the security guarantees Ukraine is seeking, aimed at deterring Russia from attacking Ukraine again, would have to come primarily from Europe. Zelensky said Thursday that he and his team had a constructive and in-depth conversation about security guarantees with Rubio, Hegseth, Witkoff, and Jared Kushner, along with military officials and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
Go back. But see, this doesn't solve anything.
No.
Okay. It doesn't solve. What is it here? Come primarily from Europe. Okay, we're chasing our tail here.
Well, that's right. Because the Europeans have made clear they're not going to do it unless they have the American backstop. That's it. They made that clear. So they're coming from primarily from Europe. Yeah, Trump will say you come from primarily from Europe. You can go there, but of course, if the moment they station their forces in Ukraine, they become targets, and if there's no American backstop, then you suddenly have dead Europeans on Ukrainian territory. So therefore, it just becomes quite pointless. You keep saying, "Oh well, they come from Europe," but where's the American backstop? No American backstop, then there's no NATO presence. One European defense official, granted anonymity, said that allies on the continent have been planning to move troops and surveillance equipment to Ukraine. Coalition troops would fly drones inside Ukraine to monitor whatever peace plan is agreed to, and while there will be boots on the ground. They will not serve on the front line. Oh, that's very cute. Oh, we're not serving on the front line.
They're advisors. Okay, right, right. This is all fantasy. This is all See, okay. First we do this, and then they'll agree with it, and then everything will be fine. Did you ask the Russians about it? Whoa, 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 whoa!
No, exactly. They will not. Oh, well, that's okay. They're not serving on the front line. Oh, well, that's all right then, because if you're helping on the back line a few miles from the front line, then the Russians are going to be okay with that. Oh, well, that's okay. You're not actually on the front line. You're 10 miles away from the front line. Okay, that's fine by us. That no problem there. I mean, I mean, it's so absurd. Um, during a visit to Washington this week, UK Defense Secretary John Healey, he's a real dummy. I mean, that guy's dumb. Told reporters that the so-called coalition of the willing is ready to do the heavy lifting in Europe, alongside the contribution to security guarantees that President Trump has talked about from the US. But we're ready to step in, and we will help secure that peace long term and protect the deal that President Trump is looking to negotiate.
See, I said this earlier. They all put on the Trump button on their lapel, okay, just as cover, okay. Right. George, I mean, in 2020, maybe in 1925, certainly in 1825, you're a British official could talk like that, okay? But not in 2025. We're ready to heavy lifting. No, you're not. Yeah. That's why you need the Americans, because you don't have heavy lifting.
They don't have exactly. And then here is the BBC, which it seems to be they can't make up their mind who wants this special economic zone. So the U.S. wants the special economic zone. Previously, Politico said no, it was Zelensky who wanted it.
Okay, Judge, if I could interrupt you. Okay, this is another example of, so Russia is losing. Russia has lost. We need a ceasefire. We need security guarantees. NATO membership, special economic. See how they just try and they're just throwing stuff up against the wall to see what sticks. Okay, that's right. All of this is meaningless.
Right. That's right. The story of the Russians losing is all part of we got to keep going. We got to absolutely got to keep supporting Ukraine because Ukraine's doing really well. Russia's losing. This is peddled by Michael McFaul. He's regularly peddles this line that Russia's losing. Ann Applebaum and on all of this, you see their Twitter feeds always. Oh, Ukraine's really doing fantastically well. Just we need to provide it with just a little bit more, and things are really going to go swimmingly for us.
Yeah, I can't remember the commentator. This was in reference to Iraq and Afghanistan. We're just going around we just need to get around at this corner. We're on. Okay,
that's right.
It's the same thing over and over, and they pulled it off for 20 years in Afghanistan.
Yeah. So the U.S. has proposed Ukraine withdraw from the eastern Donetsk region and create a special economic zone in the areas it currently controls. So this is Zelensky.
Okay, everyone, let me tell you. Okay, let's say in fantasy baseball, okay, Ukraine leaves the rest of the whatever it can still controls in the Donetsk. The Russians will just move in and take it.
Right.
Done. No special economic zone.
Well, I think that's what they mean. So, hey, well, they take it. Oh, hey, what about your security guarantee? Look, they've moved into the special economic zone. They're violating the agreement. Security guarantee. I mean, that's kind of what they're hoping for. Yeah, that's another one. Oh, well, yeah, they've moved in. So they're violating the peace agreement. So where's our security guarantee? Zelensky said territory and control of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant remain the two main unresolved issues in the peace plan proposal for Ukraine.
Okay, the way it will be resolved, everyone, is very clear to me Russia's not giving up control of the Zaporozhian
Yeah, I
nuclear
don't
power
think so.
plant.
Yeah.
Now, if the Ukrainian government wants to buy some energy, well, maybe, we can work on that, okay? But they're not going to give up that, okay? They're not. It's already being integrated into the Russian electricity grid, okay? It's already happening.
Right.
Now, if the Ukraine government wants to buy energy from that plant, that's a possibility.
Yep. Yeah. In a sobering briefing to reporters, Zelensky addressed the U.S. desire for a quick end to the conflict, the complex nature of the ongoing negotiation, and his belief that Russia had no desire to stop the war. So, what negotiations are going on if he claims Russia has no desire to stop the war? I mean, I don't even understand negotiations among whom, because they're obviously not involving Russia. And then he said, well, Russia's not interested in ending the war. And they keep repeating this. Macron says the same, Merz says the same. So what are you negotiating? I mean, then why do you keep going before the microphones and saying, oh, we're negotiating, with agreement, the peace deal and whatever, when you then admit that you're nowhere, because the other party, the most important party, is not a part of the negotiation. So this is a total, a total, miscue, and a deliberate attempt to deceive the public that there's some serious negotiations taking place. Ukraine has sent the U.S. an updated 20-point plan, plus separate documents on security guarantees and provisions for Ukraine's reconstruction. Zelensky said, according to Zelensky, the U.S. is now envisaging a solution that would see Ukrainian forces withdraw from parts of Donetsk and Russian forces committing to not advancing into the territory. And then will be the special economic zone or a demilitarized zone. As I said, Ushakov has already said they're not going to accept this. He said this in an interview. And then the management of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, highly contentious point. And then Zelensky said possible solution would be for the Russians to withdraw and Kiev to share control of the plant with the Americans, although he acknowledged that the details of such an arrangement were still unclear. And it's doubtful that Moscow would agree. Yeah, I kind of think it's doubtful. I mean, but we'll just keep talking about this and pretend that we're talking about something real. Anyway, so we got again this Zelensky said he had received a draft proposal on American security guarantees, but that the draft was a work in progress, suggesting that what has been offered by the U.S. falls short of provisions that could assuage Kiev's fears. Yeah, because there'll be just vague statements. Yeah, it's a guarantee, security. Yeah, we're down. We'll guarantee your security. Sure, we'll sign on a piece of paper. We guarantee your security. And then that's it. The U.S. does not want Ukraine in NATO. They say this openly, so I do not think they have difficulties discussing NATO with the Russians. Anyway, Zelensky said Ukraine had to be cautious, adding, we do not know what other agreements the U.S. may have with Russia. We will learn in time.
Well, that's a real vote of confidence in Zelensky.
That's right. Yeah. And then again, Zelensky says revised U.S. plan still calls for Ukraine to leave Donbass. And then President Zelensky said on Thursday that a compromise peace plan backed by the United States still called for Ukraine to withdraw from the eastern Donbass region, a concession that Mr. Zelensky said his country would not make. So if they would not make it, then what are we even talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, you're making George make all these fucking.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry.
Exactly. A lot of hard work there. Speaking to reporters.
I'm sorry for my language.
No. Speaking to reporters in Kiev, Mr. Zelensky made clear that territorial questions remained a major unresolved issue a day after Ukrainian and European leaders sent to the United States a counter-proposal to end the war. So there's a counter-proposal. I mean, and then what? You've got one proposal, which is far from clear that the Russians ever accepted, and now you're sending a counter proposal, so to mitigate whatever was in that original proposal, with a view to what? I mean, obviously with a view to making sure that there'll be no deal, no agreement. Oh, here's our counter proposal, I mean, it's like, I mean, it's not a counter proposal. I mean, it's like, because a counter proposal, like, is there some negotiations taking place where here's my terms, and then you give the counter proposal. Here, you're not even negotiating with the most important party. Oh, well, let's do the counter proposal. And then so on. Mr. Zelensky said that under the American vision, the territory in the Donbass that Ukraine still holds would become what the Trump called the free Ukrainian zone. And the Ukrainian leader said that the Americans had left uncertain who would govern the free economic zone and after a Ukrainian withdrawal. He added that it would be unfair for Ukraine to be forced to leave the Donbass, while Russia, which invaded in 2022, could stay. Okay, well, it's unfair. You know,
Well,
jolly unfair.
Shucks. Shucks.
All right. So we go back to the question I think that we asked at the beginning. What are we actually doing? What is the point of these talks? So we're having the meeting in Berlin on Monday to do what? To discuss what? We're having counter proposals and and counter proposals for what reason?
George, I wonder, maybe kind of a silly question. Why don't you just sit down with the Russians and talk to them?
It's a very exactly, and that's right. I mean, that would be the most obvious.
The Russian prospect to end this conflict is well known, extremely well known. If you just look at, okay, we got this, you got this. Okay, well, let's go. Everybody seems like to go to Doha these days. Let's go to Doha and sit down.
Right.
But no, they won't do that. They won't do that because it would legitimize Hitler. Okay.
That's right. That's right. And that's exactly right. And that's the thing, that the Russians have been very unambiguous. It seems to me that they haven't really, since Istanbul, they haven't really given any indications that they're ready for any of the concessions that we're talking about here. So it seems strange to continue along this path when you had Putin, who outlined Russia's terms for a ceasefire, not even for a final settlement, the terms for a ceasefire in June of 2024. And that hasn't really changed, which is Ukrainian withdrawal from the four oblasts. And that would be the conditions for a ceasefire, which means now we can begin the negotiations. But that hasn't changed. So all this talk of free economic zone, security guarantees. I mean,
a year ago we were talking about mineral rights. We were talking about mineral rights. Remember
mineral rights? Yeah. So it's I mean, all this is so peculiar, and then we have to say Trump is going along with this. So he says, I don't know if we're going to waste any more time. He said the thing a few days ago. I don't know if we're going to show up for this meeting because we don't really want to waste any more time. So he said, yeah. But now it seems they are going to continue wasting more time, even though the fact that it's at the level of Witkoff and Kushner, neither of whom has a formal position in the administration, and you're meeting with prime ministers. I mean, it's basically a show of some disdain, lack, that you're not really taking it seriously. But then you have to ask, well, how long is this going to go on? How long does the United States continue to with these?
Well,
completely
you already mentioned it, George. You've already mentioned it. Okay, tomorrow will be the 15th of December.
Yep.
Well, the Western world kind of starts slowing down, not shopping, okay, if you have money. Right. Fewer and fewer people have money these days. But basically December 15th to January 15th.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay, I mean.
So that takes us through, exactly. That takes us through to mid-January. And then you think, okay, well, they're already calculating. Well, then the midterms are going to come in and start taking seriously. Spring of next year. The American political scene will be dominated by the preparations for the midterms, and then Trump is going to be preoccupied with that, and he's not going to be doing anything to us. He's not going to be pressing us. I mean, they want Trump to stop pressing them. That, to stop with all these peace plans, stop with all this talk about we're going to end this war by Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. Just stop.
And it's again, hopefully one day we'll learn the calculus here, this Witkoff Kushner prong, because my gut tells me that Marco is going to be very preoccupied with the Western Hemisphere now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, why isn't he involved in it? I mean,
It's very interesting. Why
very,
isn't he?
very peculiar.
Yeah.
It's very peculiar. And I'm not casting aspersions on particularly Witkoff. Okay. He probably adores Donald Trump, but maybe Trump made him really rich. We don't know. Okay. He's a very loyal man
Right.
to Donald Trump. And that's his business. That's fine. Okay. But I mean, as statecraft here, this is a very peculiar arrangement. And the Russians pick up on this too. Okay. I mean, these are emissaries from the president. It's not, this is not a constitutional authority. Someone
No. I mean, the whole thing is itself is very interesting. I mean, Rubio is national security advisor and Secretary of State. No one has done that since the Henry Kissinger, even for a quite short time, only from I think 73 to 74. Gerald Ford hired a national security advisor. He didn't want to give Kissinger both roles. So no one has done that except for those, whatever, 18 months or maybe, some 18 months to 2 years under Nixon. So Rubio has all these positions, and yet this is a big portfolio, this war in Ukraine, and he doesn't seem to be involved in this.
I don't think he wants to be involved.
I don't think he wants to be involved. And then you think, well, who is the national security advisor? I mean, who is, discussing national security issues around the world with Trump? You get the sense nobody is. You get the sense Trump is really doing it all himself. And then when he has some negotiations, he sends Witkoff. That's it. Middle East, I'm going to send Witkoff. Here, Ukraine, I'm going to send Witkoff. And then, Rubio, who has all these positions, well, he can deal with the Western Hemisphere. It's very, very strange situation.
And if Witkoff agrees to something, then what does that mean? He personally agrees with it? Is that U.S. policy?
Right.
Inquiring minds would like to know.
I don't think he means anything.
I mean, you said it at the top. I mean, if you're the German Chancellor and you're meeting Witkoff and Kushner, I mean that's not symmetry, George.
No, there absolutely isn't. But that
what can we draw? What conclusion can we draw from all of this? They want to keep running out the clock.
That's exactly it. There's no question. That's the European Zelensky plan to run out the clock. And I think that they're figuring midterms, Trump is going to get quite preoccupied with the campaign. Once he begins to realize that he's facing a
rout,
and therefore impeachment. Immediately impeachment as soon as the Democrats take over the House. And so, well, once he preoccupies with that, he will stop bothering us. Because that's what they hate. The fact that Trump is kind of bothering them and he wants to get a deal done. And they don't want a deal. They just want to spin this out and just keep doing everything as before. Get their hands on this money. This is obvious. That's part of the plan, that they want to get their hands on the money. And then just keep doing this. And as long as Trump continues to provide arms, he continues to provide intelligence, and they've got some money, they can keep the show on the road for a few more years. So that's when so that we'll have these negotiations. We'll come up with a counter plan. That eats up some more time.
Yeah, I just wouldn't put any money on it working, but
well, the way if you think about American electoral politics, there's usually a reaction against the previous guy.
Oh,
So
yeah. I agree. I agree.
you had
What
George
I'm
W.
saying
Bush.
is that
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that could happen.
Oh, well, no. Oh,
I know
that's
as far as the election calculus, your election math is spot on. I agree with you completely. Okay, it's just that everything has to work out the way,
right.
and it never really does.
No,
Okay,
no,
something
no, no.
always happens because we see Trump being preoccupied. What do you do when someone's preoccupied? You escalate, and they'll be like, it's like a gravity. You're going to have to react.
Right.
I mean, Trump is all over the place in the best of days. Okay.
Right.
And now it's the Europeans that want to grab the reins because he's going to be preoccupied, and he'll probably go along with us anyway.
That's exactly how they're figuring. He will go along with it because he doesn't want to have yet another fight on his hands, and therefore he's just going to he's got enough problems. He's got problems here with the Venezuela. They're probably quite happy that they got the Venezuela.
Gaza is not
Exactly,
resolved.
exactly. That's not going particularly well. So he has that issue to deal with. So they look around and they say, okay, let's do the calculation, and they figure, just as I was saying, that in America, you always react against the previous guy. George W. Bush's wars, you get Obama, or at least campaigns on, no more of these stupid wars. Then you have, after Obama's kind of globalism and so on, you got Trump who's saying no more globalism. We've had it. Then, of course, then you have Biden, our allies, Ukraine and everything. And then you got Trump again. There's going to be a reaction against Trump. Back to, yes, a glorious, wonderful NATO allies, the bedrock of American security, and all that claptrap. I mean, they figure that's what it's going to come back to. Oh yeah, we'll have the whole transatlantic establishment back in control in a short period of time.
Don't underestimate, even though the Europeans deny it. How dare Trump criticize our democracy? They get involved themselves. The Europeans are going to be head deep into this midterm election too. Okay.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. And the establishment, the foreign policy blob will welcome it.
Oh,
okay?
absolutely. They will absolutely do it. They've done it before. They've been time and time again. They've been interfering actively in American electoral politics against Trump. They will absolutely do this, and they're waiting for bated breath the first impeachment. They just can't wait, and they'll probably provide intelligence against Trump. I don't know what, but they may have all kinds of damaging intelligence that they're going to feed to the Democrats on the various impeachment committees, but because they're going to be several impeachment committees working on getting Trump.
Don't be surprised, everyone, if Ukraine is another predicate for an impeachment somehow, some way.
Yes.
I won't give an outline right now, but don't be surprised if it happens.
It's very important what you just said. Because it's kind of forgotten. Ukraine was at the heart of the first impeachment. Yeah, exactly, and specifically that he was somehow betraying Ukraine. He wasn't delivering
or maybe some kind of Trump company was involved in the minerals thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably something to it, actually.
Right. There will be that, exactly. Members of Trump's family, Trump friends, and Jared, maybe all sorts of interests. Absolutely. You don't have to prove anything. It's not like a court of law where you actually have to go in and prove something to a jury. All you have to do
accusation,
some mud in the air, and that's all
why, George. That's why. We mused before the this podcast, and we got into a little bit in the podcast. But he's not thinking like Nixon, and he's not thinking like Kissinger. Because Trump, why don't you wrap this thing up now? Because in November of next year, it won't be on the agenda. It'll be yesterday's snow.
Exactly, and that's the thing, because your term in office expires very quickly, and then it's going to be all over. And therefore, you promise you're going to bring Ukraine war to an end. You didn't do it. And you can keep saying, well, it's not my war, but that's fair enough. It's not his war. It was Biden's war. But that is, you had an opportunity to end it. You didn't end it. And that's ultimately, this, saddest words, which is it might have been. You might have ended it. You didn't. You had your chance. You're not going to get another chance, and you didn't end it. And the longer it goes on, the longer he allows the Europeans and Zelensky to play this little game of having another meeting, the more these opportunities disappear.
And as much as he loathes these people, they're outwitting you.
They're not with you.
They're
That's
outwitting
because their game is so obvious, and you're playing along with it. All of these, the meetings, the proposals, security guarantees, free economic zones, and all this
George,
nonsense.
you know what? You know what this is? This is exactly what the Minsk process was all about. Exactly.
Right.
I
Exactly.
remember being and at Valdai, whole panel to, the problems with implementing the Minsk process, and we need to have a meeting on this, would this be a tax-free zone or would this be, and all of it was just verbiage. It was
Right.
all nonsense.
Right.
Okay. And then we're going through the same thing again.
Right. Yeah.
And they're making us talk about it.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. So he has the opportunity. You have the opportunity to end it, and you haven't done it. And that the Nixon Kissinger analogy is very good because Nixon ended it at the end of his first term. Boom, that's it. He got it out of the way. Got it out of the way. Well, peace is at hand in just a few days before the election, and that was pretty much it. I think American public said, yeah. I mean, they're obviously very close to a deal, and they were close to a deal. And but that's what you do. You did it in your first term. You said you would do it, and you did it. Um, but Trump isn't doing that. Trump isn't getting his hands around it. You're right. He detests these people. He detests these Europeans. He knows they hate him. He knows they're plotting against him. He despises Zelensky. The contempt with which he speaks about him is plain, but he doesn't do what he needs to do. And if you don't do what you need to do, then sorry, but your term expires and you'll be kind of an also ran, and the historians will be writing about the missed opportunities.
That's right, because if Nixon hadn't done what he did, ending the war in Indochina, history would have remembered it as Nixon's war. Okay, but people don't do that. People don't say Nixon's war. No, it was Kennedy and Johnson.
That's right.
He cheated the liberal historians. Okay, they can't tack that onto him.
No, they can't. They can't.
Just to end this here, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but for me, the core of this podcast is to talk about leadership qualities. Okay, and Trump isn't exhibiting
No.
true leadership here.
No.
You can't just get by just tweaking the news cycle, calling a reporter piggy and stuff like that. It's not going to work. Okay, you can control the news cycle, but is it to your benefit?
No.
And is it to the benefit of the noble ideas like ending wars?
Right.
Okay?
No, that's right. That's right. And that's the thing. It's very entertaining. You have to say he is entertaining.
Yeah.
And you can say when he's gone, we will miss him. Whoever comes after him, it'll be a hard act to follow. But you got to have substance. You got to, it's entertaining, but you also have to have the substance. And the reason why Nixon is always very interesting is that he left, in disgrace, and he's now celebrated, acknowledged as one of the great presidents. That's his accomplishments. Those are his, because of the measure of his accomplishments of what he did in less than 6 years.
And with every passing years, he goes up the chart. Yeah. Okay. Right. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, but history will be kind to Richard Nixon. I truly believe that. Okay. And people will say, Barack Obama, yeah, well, he was one of the mediocre ones.
Exactly, one of the mediocre ones. That's right. Came
Yeah,
in
like
with a
the
great deal of
five
promise.
presidents before the Civil War. The
That's right,
five.
exactly. Came in with a lot of promise, won two very comfortable elections, even had a veto-proof majority in the Senate. That hasn't been done in a while, and didn't really do much with that. And so, yeah, I think you can see history isn't really not going to be kind to him. So that's and I think Trump had an opportunity. He came back. It was a historic comeback. It hasn't been done.
Slipping
Since
through his
Grover
fingers,
Cleveland.
George. Slipping through his
It's
fingers.
slipping through his fingers. A year. That's a year. And we know the presidential terms are over very quickly.
A presidential term is 4 years. What you accomplish or what you don't accomplish in the first year will taint the rest of the term.
That's right.
It's always the case.
That's right.
No, nobody, comes out, in the ninth inning and saves their presidency. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. No. On the contrary, it's like the last 2 years are you're pretty much your kind of your lame duck years. I mean, because you're already yesterday's news. Everyone's preoccupying with the idea of, well, who's coming next, and because you are lame duck, because everyone knows your term is coming to an end, you don't have the clout that in Congress that you had at the beginning, because then everyone's afraid of bucking you because, hey, well, he has the power. But if your term's coming to an end, you really don't have it. They're already thinking about the future, who's coming next. They're making their own deals. So you lost. It's the first year. Always the first year of the presidency is the key.
Meanwhile, he's campaigning for Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
He's denigrating Massey and MTG. And I like Massey for a lot of things. I'm not big on libertarian economics, not my cup of tea. But he's handicapped himself at the knees.
Yeah.
You don't do this before a midterm. You just don't do this.
No, you don't.
Oh, this is an unconventional presidency. You can say that again.
And this
No, there's just not a lot of political. I mean, George and I can debate and even really argue about policy, okay? But at the end of the day, the power that he has, it's receding with every passing day. I just see that it's being squandered. Okay.
I think so then. And this one,
he came back.
Yeah.
Came back.
Yeah.
And he had a mandate. We haven't seen a presidential election with a mandate for a very long time.
Well, I think that's right. And I think that's the thing. And this war in the Ukraine, that should have been his signature issue. Should have been his signature. He was unambiguous from the start that he was against this war. He blamed Biden for this war over and over again. He made clear he would end this war. It's a stupid war. It has nothing to do with American interests. He should have got this. If he'd have got this out of the way, then other things might be forgiven and forgotten. But if you don't, which should be his issue, his signature issue, and he fails, then I think it becomes a really problem. And particularly if it drags on, and you're in the second and third years of your presidency, and it's still there. A war you said you would get done before inauguration. That's really that is going to damage him and weaken him.
And the disdain you have for the Europeans in your own new national security document.
Right, exactly.
They are trumping you, Trump.
Yep, you're right, absolutely, exactly. They're winning. They're winning.
They're winning.
Yeah, you've shown your contempt. Legitimate. It was great. You wrote that national security strategy document. Said it absolutely right about how useless they are, and then they're outmaneuvering you over and over again. They're outmaneuvering you.
And we can close on this because we've been going for 2 hours now. Yeah. George and I have read these national security strategies. They're dry as bone usually, very repetitive, a little nuanced every once in a while. But this one was personal.
This was very exactly, because normally they tell us, oh, Russia's an existential threat to the
Revisionist
security.
power. Revisionist
That's
power.
that's right. NATO is at the heart of the transatlantic security, and Iran and North Korea continue to be dire threats. The usual blather. This had none of that. The only the only ones that there was anything negative about were the Europeans. Those Iran got barely a mini mention. I can't even remember what he said about North Korea, but hardly anything there. Even China was kind of anodyne, status quo.
Well,
Just
I
want to
mean,
maintain. We want to maintain the status quo in Taiwan.
it's you could even, and maybe we could talk about this another time, but it looks like Trump's getting very dovish on
Very dovish, exactly. That is something we should talk about another time. He's becoming the biggest dove on China in Washington. He's getting attacked on China by the Democrats for being too dovish on China. Yeah, so that.
All right, everyone. Because of these frivolous people that history will pulverize in European capitals, they're forcing. I hate them for forcing us to talk about this.
That's right.
Meaning, okay, I don't know what everybody, maybe you're not watching this, this is not live. Okay, you're enjoying your Sunday evening. Okay, we're working.
Yep.
We're working.
We're working.
Okay,
That's
we're
right.
working.
Yeah.
I lost count. George did a huge slide dump on me. Okay. Okay. I always check the corner thing.
No.
You see it in my eyes. I know you. Like, oh, he noticed. Okay.
Right.
Point is, work went into here. No more jokes. No more laughter. Work went into this for you, the viewer.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
I think you can take it from there, George.
That's it. Absolutely. And that's why the issue of the tip jar comes along and says, why isn't it tipping in the right direction? And then, of course, Buddy then chimes in and said, yeah, I've been working a year and a day on this. I did all that, and it's all unrewarded, all unremunerated. So, Buddy's very good at like that. And, Buddy wants the credit, let Buddy take the credit. But absolutely right. Whatever you've got, anything at all, Bitcoin, $100 bills, whatever it is, straight into the tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, we're going to be able to reconcile with the dogs, because it's getting very hard. They're just being very difficult. This cold winter isn't helping. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.